Everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. Let's talk about Alligator Alcatraz. It is really disturbing when you look at it. I mean, these people have been put in the middle of a moat and they're surrounded by alligators, snakes, and such. And maybe our government feels, this administration feels that it will be a deterrent. But is this cruel and unusual punishment? You do know that many people who are in Alligator Alcatraz, they are citizens, and they are supposed to be held. These are civil violations, not criminal violations. That having been said, what do you think about Alligator Alcatraz? And what do you think about Governor DeSantis? It seems that he's been trying to get on the correct side of President Trump since his failed presidential bid in 2024. And so now his Republican Party, get this, everyone, they are selling memorabilia for Alligator Alcatraz. You can't make this up. The Republican Party of Florida is selling Alligator Alcatraz memorabilia. Think about that. Think about the fact that this prison was erected in a couple of weeks. And one has to wonder, who is profiting from all of this? Who has made money? And I'm going to tell you, just given what happens to people who are enslaved, what happens to people who are in concentration camps, detention camps, one has to wonder what is happening to these people. Whatever is happening in secret. We do know that American gynecology was founded when Black people were enslaved. Plantations were the sites of unending medical experiments. You saw that also during the Holocaust. But whenever you see people who are living under duress, that's what happens. And when you have people in our government who are so prominent now who are talking about implanting chips on people, you might say that I'm sounding like a conspiracist, but I'm just going on what Elon Musk and others have said they want to do. Our department, the head of our Department of Health, HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy, says that he wants people to have wearable chips. So what's going on with these people? These are deplorable conditions. They are having to basically use the water that they have to waste, put their human waste in. But you know what? I want this magnificent panel to talk about it, because it is, the more you read about this, when you see that members of Congress are being blocked from entering, you got to ask what's going on here and who's in charge here. So I want you to go to Blue Sky, Santita Jackson, .bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social. Of course, we're here on the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. I want to thank you for your support. Continue to like and share the show, everybody. Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook. Please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. Don't even think about going to Santita Jackson. It's a landing page, and I can't get any friends. Oh, you know how that goes. It's terrible. They're throwing people away, and I'm not doing it. Facebook is doing it. I don't like the rules, but those are the rules. And then, of course, I'm still on X at Santita J. But I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. A lot of people have a good many feelings about people who are here. They say illegally. Okay. One has to wonder why so many Venezuelans are here. Have you ever asked yourself why it is that so many American corporations want Venezuela without Venezuelans? Because they want their oil. Think about that, everybody. These people are not running to America as much as they are being chased out of their homes. Think about that. That's Haiti. That's all over the world. All over the world. But I want to talk with this magnificent panel about it and look at how it's being reported. Of course, Jim Narakis from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting is here to talk about this. Ari Blomkatz in These Times magazine. I urge you to subscribe to and really support Extra. and fairness and accuracy in reporting. Fair.org. Please go there. And in these times, I'm so glad that you drop off in these times at the Rainbow Push offices, because I can't wait to get over there and grab mine. But because some of the best journalism that is that really tells the people story, you're going to find that in these times magazine. Please. And if you want to understand what's really the story behind the story, go to Fair. And I'm going to start with you, Ernesto Scott Castaneda. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Of course, you are at American University. You can't help it. You're not at Howard University. But that's all right. It's still Washington, D.C. I love it. And of course, he's the director of the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies. And you are really such a brilliant interpreter of what's happening in this space. What is Alligator Alcatraz?
Thank you, Santita. That is the question. What is it? Well, it is not a prison, right? Because the people there are not there because they have engaged in crime. They haven't committed a homicide or robbery, contrary to what the administration sometimes says. We know many analyses have shown that the majority, over 70% of the people in these detention centers, have not committed any crime beyond maybe not having their immigration status accurate, which, as you correctly said already, is a civil offense, like parking in the wrong place or a minor driving infraction, not a criminal offense. So this is not a prison. It is not a federal supervised ICE detention center. This is under the supervision of the state of Florida. Therefore, they can even more so deny local Congress people to come in and supervise this because it's not a federal center. It's also not run by the military. It's not run by a for-profit corporation, which happens a lot in immigration spaces, but this is not a case of. This is a hybrid between federal, local base and cooperating very closely with ICE and Department of Homeland Security. But it's a detention for migrants who are on the way to probably being deported. But the law about immigration detention centers says that these places should not be punitive because they, again, are not holding criminals. They are holding people that may be deported. Normally, they will go in an immigration court, and then the immigration judge will say, yes, this person should be deported. They don't have permission to be here, etc. Or they're in the process, like many of these people, they came from Guatemala, from Venezuela, from Haiti with permission of the government. They had parole. They used CBP-1. They entered following the law, and they had a protective status that now has been removed. What should we do with them? Because they fear persecution in their home countries. So then, should they apply for asylum? Should they be allowed to continue with their asylum case? Those are the people that the administration has been targeting for detention because they have their information. They know where they live. They know who they are, etc. So what this is, it's they're not death chambers. We're not that bad yet, but they are. They're not black sites because they're inside of the U.S. So that people should have all the jurisdiction and the protection of the Constitution, but they are close to concentration camps because they are concentrating particular type of people because of the phenotype, because of the way they look, because of the race of where they were born. And it's getting close to what we saw during World War II with the internment of Japanese Americans. It was a time of war. It was a lot of justifications. The public was behind that. Today, we are not in war, and most of the public is against these things, but they are still happening. So what is this is the right question, and one could say that this is against the law. And to finish this answer, you were also asking who benefits. And what we know so far is that Governor DeSantis, who always has tried to be further to the right on immigration than Donald Trump in order to be the next presidential candidate of the Republicans. So this is not a new, and it's not only to try to stay in the good graces of Trump, which all Republicans want to do, but he wants to out-Trump Trump on immigration. It didn't help him in the previous campaign, in the internal competition of the Democratic Party, the primaries, but he thinks it may help him in the future. I doubt so. But in the meantime, he's doing this. He took away the landing strip from the Miami County. He says it's a state of emergency because of immigration. So therefore, he's contracting companies to build this very fast, as you said, without a bidding process, without people giving proposals and then he's seeing which is the better one. So therefore, again, they are skipping a lot of the local laws and procedures. And here is the answer. So the people that have these contracts to provide different things to this detention center, they are making a lot of money because they are paying probably really high prices. And some journalists are starting to dig and find evidence of this.
So, what is the point of putting these people in a swamp? We're going into hurricane season, uh, Ernesto, and this is an area. This place was hurriedly put together. One could credibly, I think, make the argument that one good storm could wreck this place, and a lot of people could lose their lives. Already, they are living under. Really, there are food shortages. The people who are the detainees, the prisoners. That's my characterization of them. Food shortages, maggots are in the food. There's sanitation problems. Like I said, they're letting, you know, very few toilets work. People obviously have to relieve themselves, but you're not able to flush the toilet. So you just have waste. And, it's not these people are not able to bathe. I mean, this is a violation of human rights. And it is my understanding of the law, I'm no lawyer, that when you come to the United States, you're protected by our laws. Is that not correct?
It is correct, but indeed the conditions are worse than those of any prison. This wouldn't be legal if citizens were being held there. This probably, I mean, yeah, the people are recording all the ways that this is not following any standards. It wouldn't be allowed to open as a summer camp, as a restaurant, as anything else. So this is rushed, very cheaply, very quickly constructed place that is already having flooding and all these types of issues. And as you say, Santita, if there was a big storm, a hurricane, tragedy could happen, as we have been seeing in Texas and other states. But I think this is on purpose, right? I think the horrible conditions, cruelty is the point, as some others have said. And the purpose here is what we saw with African Americans historically and other groups, is to dehumanize them, right? To treat them as less than, and because they are not citizens, because they are not Americans fully in the sense of DeSantis and Trump, the way they think of America, they think that these people should be punished, should be embarrassed, should be ashamed, should be publicly humiliated by being placed in these conditions. And they were making lightly, they were making jokes, which are not funny, but they were saying how, if the people run, they're going to be caught by the alligators and they're going to be eaten. And they were laughing. But this is a serious thing.
And our president thought that was funny.
The president making, yes. I mean, the president making those comments. So he's humanizing, he's verbally abusive, as he always is with immigrants, but also then he's created this metaphor of the swamp and the moat of alligators that he wanted at one point around the U.S.-Mexico border, the wall. Now it's a reality with the Everglades that actually have that in a protected place, sacred for Native Americans. And then he couldn't get Alcatraz because it would be too expensive, but then he has this Alligator Alcatraz. So again, all these little kid menus of what they are asking for Christmas is happening. DeSantis giving him the gift of having all those elements of the humanization, terrorizing and humiliating people, immigrants' lives at risk, all together. That's why he was so happy to go there, to tour it, and is proud about this name. But this is something that Americans at large, except for the people buying the memorabilia and actually donating a lot of money after this happened, which is the core base of Trump, the 30% MAGA. The rest of the people and the rest of the world are watching in disgust at what's happening.
Ari Bloomkatz, help me to understand this, because you not only write about this, report on it, you opine about it. And it doesn't, I mean, this is an expression of the cruelty in this system. But, you already have a Chrome detention center in Miami, where the conditions are the same. And I saw a TikTok video, just a few days ago. A young Black American man said, Black women, people of color, please carry your IDs with you because they're just picking people up. You know, and eventually it will be white people who look like who appear to be poor. I mean, it's starting with black and brown people, but eventually it's going to any dissenter. I mean, I just see this going down. We're down the rabbit hole, Ari. I mean, but I mean, this speaks to our prison system, this incarceration system. This is unbelievable, but maybe not. Ari.
Yeah, I mean, thanks so much, and thanks for having me on. And Jim and Ernesto, really great to be on with both y'all as well. Yeah, I mean, like Florida's done a great job at incarcerating people for a long time. There's 150,000 folks who are incarcerated there. There's been all sorts of things. But as Ernesto pointed out as well, this is both a very different situation, but also very much related to the way our country likes to often operate. There are two things that I've been thinking about in relationship to this. One is that this is an interesting extension of ICE as a mass criminal operation and enterprise, right? This is a natural extension. ICE as a mass criminal enterprise needs places to operate as a mass criminal enterprise. It has to have locations where it can do its horrible things, right? And so these are happening, right? What's interesting to me about this is that it's not like all of these lawmakers just showed up there. Mm-hmm. It's not like Debbie Wasserman Schultz hadn't been giving statements about this before. So for me, there's a real question about the role that any sort of democratic politics are playing here in resistance to these sorts of things happening. In particular, because a lot of the reporting right now is look, the outrage of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Look how outraged she is. Look how angry she is. Mind you, this is someone who was chair of the Democratic Party for many, many years, that had a really awful platform around immigration, in that time, helped pave ways for this. And now all of a sudden there's this outrage. Oh my God.
But wait, Ari, I need you to go back to that.
Sure.
Because that's very important, because you're amplifying the fight that we've had within the Democratic Party between the centrist or right-wing Democrats and the energy of the party, the progressive Democrats. Please speak to her record.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wasserman Schultz is beyond the perfect person for that, because it came out very clearly that how much the DNC was favoring Clinton over Bernie during this and all of that. So I mean, as a metaphor and representation, it's very clear. But the other thing for me is this is what you get when you have the politics that have dominated our country. This is actually the result of it. And so I think thinking about it just as a Trump and right-wing and MAGA problem is actually not going to help us all make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen, to make sure that we don't wind up in mass internment that is on the path right now. And we really are seeing ourselves on that path right now to the mass internment that you talked about, Santita. But we're certainly not going to not get there through Wasserman Schultz type politics and fake outrage right now. If you look at actually some of the press releases, and in particular her press release when Trump toured the facility, what she's talking about, her opening gambit with the press release, is that this is a problem because of money. This is an economic, how could we be misspending this Everglades money? And only until the second half of the statement you get to, yeah, and also if there was a hurricane, this might be a problem. But it has nothing to do with the inhumanity of the situation and the fact that it is not legal. So we have our lawmaker not actually upset about the law, right? It's upset about fake outrage. So
no, but I think that really goes to the heart of this, because these are the people who are leading the charge. You almost see Martin Frost, who is really progressive, fighting for his space. You know, I saw his video. He was as he was leaving the detention center, and he just you could see that this was very disturbing to him. And this is not something. Ari, help me with this. And Ernesto, I mean, Jim, feel free to jump in, but Ari, first you. This goes to the heart of what America is supposed to be. I didn't say what it has been. As we try to move toward a more perfect union, we're not supposed to be this. I don't care who you are. But we have people who basically giving lip service to this now, Ari. I mean, and I'm really glad that you brought up that point. I mean, hey, and that's what's frightening, because I wonder how much of a fight they're going to put up. Because this to me is very, like you said, mass incarceration. I mean, what do you see? How do you see that coming? When you say mass incarceration, mass internment, if you will, why does that? Why? I mean, what here is the harbinger of that?
Well, I mean, like the first thing, right, is like we already did this once. Like we did mass internment, like Trump round like one, like kind of already. Like it's like we're goldfish. We don't remember all of these like families that we just like separated completely and also put illegally in facilities that were like absolutely horrible. And finally, ProPublica like snuck some audio in like to this like oh my god. So like we're headed there because not only do we know that that's the playbook now, but it was the playbook before and it was executed, and now it's being executed like much like more. But you know, like I'd love to hear like, you know, Ernesto and Jim, what you think. The last part of it I'll say, I think is I think there's a real question right now for you know, people in the United States about how much evil like we're okay like living with constantly. The last couple of years we have seen, you know, the depths of US empire into evil, into absolute, you know, the most horrifying things. And when we talk about like who we're supposed to be, for me, I would think that one thing that we could maybe rally around is that like the amount of like death and inhumanity like at a baseline is things that we can agree on resisting.
Absolutely. I mean, but you know, what's interesting to me, Jim, is how it's being reported. The conditions under which these people are having to exist or subsist. I'm not hearing about that. I have to go to print journalism.
Yeah, the way that we know that mass deportation is and mass concentration camps are coming is that there was $175 billion earmarked for that in the reconciliation bill.
Mm-hmm.
It's the check has been written, and it's a certainty that Trump is going to cash it. This is just an enormous amount of money to be spending on concentration camps and on a secret police force that operates without warrants, with masks. The vast increase in funding for ICE should be terrifying to not just to people who are immigrants, whether here with documentation or without documentation, but for everyone who is participating in the political life of America. When Trump met with the president of El Salvador, one of the things he said to him was, "Homegrowns are next." You know, he was so excited about sending migrants to a concentration camp in El Salvador. He wanted to do it to American citizens. You know, and his kind of go-to when he doesn't like someone is to talk about taking away their citizenship.
Yeah.
You know, whether they are naturalized citizens or born in America, because that no longer, from his point of view, being born in America does not guarantee you citizenship anymore. That's one of his big planks, is to get rid of birthright citizenship. And the point of the point of ICE is that, from Trump's point of view, they do not need to respect due process, because the undocumented are not persons in the Trump administration's view, and therefore don't have the guarantee of due process that every person in the United States is entitled to. One thing that's kind of an interesting footnote in the reconciliation bill is that it caps the number of immigration judges. Even while it's spending tens of billions of dollars on deportation, it's limiting the number of judges that can oversee this process, because he doesn't want judges to oversee this process. He wants it to be a lawless process. And if there is not due process for deportation, anyone is subject to deportation, because they could arrest any one of us, and if we don't have the right to appear before a judge and say, "Hey, I was falsely arrested. I'm a U.S. citizen," then we might as well not. If we have no means to establish that, if we have no process to establish that, we are all equally vulnerable to being rendition to whether it be a detention camp in the Everglades, or a concentration camp in El Salvador or South Sudan, or wherever he decides to send people next. This is he's been very forthright about. He sees this as a political tool. He sees people who disagree with him, who for example, oppose the genocide in Gaza, do not have First Amendment rights, do not have political rights, are subject to being treated as non-persons. And in terms of how this is being covered, this is a constitutional emergency
Mm-hmm.
that the United States has not seen in more than a century. The prospect of having a government that like will there be elections in 2028
Mm-hmm.
is an open question. We
Yeah.
don't know for sure that there will be. And the press, the establishment press, rather than treating this as the emergency that it is trying to both sides this, and are really very excited when they could find common ground with the Trump administration, as if finding that common ground is going to protect them. And I feel like the New York Times, the Washington Post should be looking at Harvard and Columbia and seeing what meeting the Trump administration halfway gets you. It gets you nothing. For MAGA, it's a question of, are you with us or are you against us? If you are not 100% with MAGA, you're an enemy, and will be treated like an enemy. And the idea that because you are focusing on, like I was working on a story today for FAIR about the New York Times coverage of the reconciliation bill.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very focused on the debt. The debt was the big issue for them. And they were like, well, it is true that it would be good to make long-term changes in Social Security and Medicare. And kind of like agreeing that, yes, we should be cutting the social safety net, but we shouldn't be cutting taxes at the same time.
But they don't leave space for the question. You take $1 trillion with a T, $1 million out of healthcare,
Yeah.
move it over to the military. I mean, because let me tell you, I can look at Harvard and Columbia, but I know there has been. I went to Howard. I went to an HBCU, And HBCUs are always struggling for funding. We don't have the endowments. Our presidents spend most of their money trying to raise a budget. Okay, Howard is unique amongst HBCUs because half of our operating budget comes from the federal government. But that means we don't have the space. Our president doesn't have the space, and the board of trustees don't give the students the space to do a lot of protesting. This was something that my parents had to deal with when they were in college 60 years ago at North Carolina A&T, which is where they had mass sit-ins, at the Woolworth counters and on and on and on. I mean, there's the chilling of the dissent in this country. And we've always pushed back against dissenters. Look at Dr. King. We can just keep on going. Malcolm X, we have an issue with that.
Yeah.
But now, like you said, we've got a 5-alarm fire with respect to our Constitution. They're not talking about that at all. In fact, they're glossing over it. I mean, but Ernesto, let me, if I could, Jim, I'd like to bring Ernesto in here because we had a U.S. senator slammed to the ground by ICE. I mean, and we have a U.S. Representative who's being indicted because she wanted to find out what was going on with the people in her district. I mean, this is people. People ought to be outraged by this. That their federal representatives have no space and have no standing in our government right now. And when I look at, when I look at Alligator Alcatraz, I think of how Haitians have been treated coming into this country. What we have done. They would let the Cubans come in. We'd go in the water and bring them in. But the Haitians, they push you back out to the alligators. Good luck. This in other words, this is not new, right? None of this is new. So I'm trying to find out. I mean, where do we go from here, Ernesto? I mean, how do we begin to bend this conversation? And Ari, I need you to help me to understand how we bend the conversation so that we can talk about these issues, because we're looking at the personalities of all of these figures who are involved. No one is looking at the people who are locked up. I don't know how many people have died. I'm sure some people are near death. They can't see their lawyers. I mean, this is very unsettling. I think all Americans should be outraged by this and frightened, quite frankly. Not fearful, but we ought to be on guard. And I don't think that we are. I think we just see these little brown people and some of these black people sprinkled in, and that's their problem. They deserve it. Because I've heard a lot of people, even some brown people and some black people, say, well, they're illegal. So they shouldn't be here. I said, but they shouldn't be treated this way. I don't see that. I don't see the case being made for that. I mean, you don't even have to make a case for it if you just report on what these people. I mean, let CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, they should be going into the facilities and touring them, not the places with the made-up beds. I mean, touring and going through there. They should demand that. That's their right. That's their responsibility. That's not happening.
Right. This idea about some people being illegal and this illegality and the invasion from the South is something that has been going on for a while. The Democrats were complicit. The Republicans, mainstream media reproduced that argument. So a lot of people, black and brown, have bought into it, and understandably so. They have kind of bought this idea of securing the border and getting rid of criminals and all that. So that message was very successful. But today we have to show all audiences that this is not about immigration per se, even if you buy that argument, which is false, and it's always been in bad faith. But anyway, today is not about immigration. Why? Because the border is basically closed. There's very few people coming at the border these days. And we can discuss the negative effects of that, but that's a different discussion. But there's nobody coming here. This is about deporting people. And it's, as has been clear for most people, it's not about deporting people that had committed a crime, that are already in prison and serving a sentence for that. It is getting fruit vendors in LA, women, children, etc., people from schools, people from churches. So they're really going for brown folks, some of them with permits, some of them without it. But as Jim was saying a minute ago, it's not only about brown folks or immigrants. Then anybody in the public space or in your house is at risk because there is no due process. People can be presumed guilty without any evidence that they have committed any crime, and they can be taken away by force. They can be detained temporarily or for a number of days. And again, for some people, including brown people and white rural people, it's going to be very hard for them to prove that they are citizens. Millions of Americans don't have a passport. Millions of Americans will have a hard time finding their birth certificate. And how can you prove that you're a citizen? They have taken a lot of people in Texas, in Arizona, in Florida, who are U.S. citizens, but because of the way they look and the last names that they have, ICE and other agents presumed they were foreigners, and they were detained for many days until lawyers were able to help them and get them out. And we know their stories, but we may indeed have many other people that haven't been able to talk to a lawyer who are detained completely illegally. So that's one problem that affects everybody in potential. And then another thing that there was a risk, but it's already a reality, is that the targeting of political enemies. So people from the opposition party, which in this country is only the Democrats, already Senator Padilla, we saw it on camera on the floor, because all the security saw a brown man and they assumed that he was violent, that he was attacking, and that he was undocumented. He was the face of the enemy, literally. So they put him down. The fact that he's a senator, one of 100 and so, still he ended up in the ground. So the black
he wasn't just on the ground. He was really in a state of arrest.
He was detained, yes, handcuffed, humiliated, yes, absolutely, yeah. Ruffled.
And was it the vice president who didn't know who he was?
And the Secretary of Homeland Security, who testified in front of him to get.
I mean, it's just, but he kept saying, "I'm a U.S. senator." They didn't care. They didn't believe him. They were like, "This old brown guy. Are you serious right now?" Knee in his back.
Right. So just before I give it back to Ari, just this shows, and the budget that ICE has now is that Trump wants to use this force, violent people, to go for people of color, to go for immigrants, to go for people protesting in the streets, to go for anybody speaking against him, journalists, politicians that are opposition, that are not in the Trump camp, and enact some type of political violence against them. And because they are covered, because their faces are covered, again, it takes us back to another very negative, very dark past of American history, when bandits will just cover their faces with a full cover or just partial cover, and go and look for African Americans or Catholics and burn their houses, burn crosses, punish them, kill them. So if we're not careful, we're going to go back to that, and nobody wants to go back to that. It's not good for anyone. So indeed, it's very worrisome.
But we're not back. We're here. I mean, I think we have to address the fact that we're here, because far too many Americans are okay with this, because we're debating the legality of human beings. It's far too many of us. It makes me uncomfortable to see any human being treated this way. And far too many of us feel, look, they're illegal and we have to deal with that. I mean, I've been shocked by some people that I know who have held that line, and they're very, very serious about it. I said, so this is okay with you? Well, they shouldn't be here. And when I hear the First Lady say you should come here the right way, she came here on a genius visa, right? I mean, are you serious? You came in as a model, but you're a genius. What? You don't split atoms. You walk runway. I don't understand. And so, I mean, I just need to know, Ari, what is our takeaway here? I mean, because I'm not seeing, I don't even think many Americans don't even know the conditions under which these people are having to subsist, but we don't know that about our own, about the rest of the prison system. We saw during COVID, people just died because they went untreated. I mean, this to me is like an extension of that.
Yeah.
What do you, how do you handle this? Because this is Alligator Alcatraz. It's being amplified, but just in Miami, you've got the Crone Center. Their conditions are much the same. You can just keep on going, and you've got a governor who's extremely happy about this.
I think that human beings have a capacity in them for cruelty. I think history demonstrates that, and an ability to take pleasure in cruelty, and that is what the MAGA movement, to a great extent, is tapping into, is the feeling of liberation from having to feel responsibility for other human beings. Something that when Trump ran the first time, something a lot of people were saying about him was, he's saying what we're thinking.
Yeah.
And that was liberating, to have someone to stand on stage and have no shame about expressing that kind of hatred. And that is a big part of his appeal, and it's a huge part of the appeal of, it's why they're selling Alligator Alcatraz memorabilia, because the cruelty is not a problem. It's the selling point. But I also feel like human beings have a great capacity for empathy. For virtually everyone who's not a diagnosable sociopath has the ability to empathize with other human beings. And I feel like if media were doing their job, if media were talking about the people who are being affected by these policies and humanizing them in fighting against the dehumanization, the dehumanization that's inherent in calling people illegals, and acting as though that gives you carte blanche to treat them as despicably as you want. When you see that these are actual human beings with lives, with families, with hopes and dreams, that are as real as, the fact that you have a U.S. passport does not make you any more human than someone who doesn't have one. And I think that if you let people see these people, if you let us see each other, it would go a long way towards making it no longer acceptable to treat millions of people as though their lives had no value, as though they deserve to be put in the most miserable situations possible, because they are unpersons, because they're not unpersons, and we would see that if media would talk to them and show us to them. And I also feel like making the connection between the lives of the undocumented and the lives of U.S. citizens is very important. This is not a question of we are going to hurt these people in order to benefit U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens will be hurt by this, which is why Trump has directed ICE to concentrate its efforts on cities in blue states, because it won't help the economy to rip people out of jobs, to turn productive members of society into detainees in a prison camp. That will not help your economy. That's going to hurt your economy. It's going to be very terrible to your economy. And I think that spelling out the ways in which we do depend on each other. It's not to instrumentalize them, like people are only useful to the extent that they mow our lawns. But we are part of one society. The people who are. I live in New York City, and there are a lot of people here who are not documented, and they are part of our community. They're part of the city that I live in, and the idea that goons from the Department of Homeland Security are going to come through and rip them out of their apartments, rip them out of the small businesses where they work. That is an outrage that the media ought to be recognizing as a disaster. And in the reconciliation bill that gave this $175 billion for this atrocity, media paid very little attention to that. We did actually a study in stories on the reconciliation bill. 6% of them mentioned ICE funding as part of what this was going to do. It's a huge, like 175 billion it's larger than the military budget of every country in the world except for the United States and China. So it's like more money than the Russian military.
But Jim, it's not that surprising, because if you dig down, then you have to look at the sponsors for their news shows. Remember, let us not forget the late, great, the iconic Phil Donahue. What a decent, wonderful man. He had the #1 show on this nascent network, MSNBC. Remember that?
Yeah.
And they took him off the air.
Right.
Because he was telling us not to invade Iraq.
Yeah.
So it seems
there are decades of history of corporate media making decisions in favor of their bottom line. I feel like a person, even a CEO of a corporate media outlet, now thinking, well, how is Trump going to help my bottom line? How is he going to help my bank account?
But Jeff Zucker said that, right? He said he's great for ratings. Remember that?
I do. And I think it's incredibly short-sighted. I think that these are people who are going to, Trump will not stop. Trump will not be like, okay, I've made my point. I no longer need to prove to the people who I think have looked down on me all my life. Yeah. I'm fine with them now. He is going to keep rolling back the civil rights, civil liberties, until he has paid back all the people who he feels have slighted him in his long life. And that includes, for sure, the owners of the New York Times. So if they're thinking like, well, this is good, for clicks on our daily podcast, and not thinking, I am going to end up in the same boat as Mahmoud Khalil if things keep going the way they are going, that they should heed the writing on the wall now and make the connections between the people who are being targeted by Trump right now and the people who are going to be targeted by Trump. Once we've established that we have a secret police force in the United States empowered to arrest anyone without a warrant based on how they look, which is like literally the criteria that the Trump administration is putting forth as their justification for why they're arresting people. This is it's bad news. It's bad news for people like you and me. It's bad news for anyone who is not 100% on the MAGA train.
But it's bad news for the Republic, because I think this is a bipartisan betrayal, quite frankly, and I think we have to be honest about that, because these are two wings of the same bird. And what we're looking at, Ari, is it's the whole thing is all this is very troubling to me, because Trump and presidents, sadly, have become front men and will hopefully one day a front woman for the oligarchs. Trump was bankrupt 30 years ago. There was a CNN report. I remember it because I lived in New York, and all of the things that people talk about today, all the references to Trump, that was local news. In New York, you got the New York Post, you got the New York Times, you got the Daily News, you got the Village Voice, you got everything coming at you every day. Well, not the Village Voice every day, but you get my point. And so he was personally and corporately on the verge of bankruptcy. He was bankrupt. But Gloria Borger did a piece talking about his comeback. It was a special. And Mr. Pomerantz, the lawyer for the 72 banks that he owed, said, look, the banks decided that he was worth more alive than dead. In bankers' parlance, that means dead is bankrupt.
Yeah.
He's a great salesman. And that's what they've been using him for. So, I mean, my thing is looking at him, he's going to be gone at some point. But Elon Musk is still here. Peter Thiel is here. Alex Karp, Palantir, these people are deeply embedded. He's been there. And JD Vance, is he 40? Did he just, I mean, they brought a whole team of young people in. I'm still dealing with Nancy Pelosi and them. I mean, these are deep octogenarians. I'm not mad at you. I mean, I love my elders, and I'm not saying throw them out, but the Republicans have brought in a whole new young crew, and this is what I'm running low on time. I want to, if you do, but we can run over a little bit, but I'm going to have a break here in a minute. But Ari, I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, because it's, you know, because Trump is, I get looking at him, but if we don't look at the people who are behind him, because, I mean, it's just like Reagan, and we all now know Reagan wasn't even there. They talk about Biden. Are you for real? Reagan wasn't there in 1980. Bless his heart. God bless him. Nicest guy, but not here.
I've been thinking a bit about this poem that we're all taught as, you know, sort of kids in relationship to the Holocaust. And, you know, it's like the first they came for the communists. I did not speak out because I was not a communist, and, you know, the socialist and things like that. And it, you know, very powerful, like a poem, and it, you know, like I think expresses something. But there's something that like Jim referenced that is part of this that we're not doing as a left in relationship to the conversation that is really critical. And it's also sort of like missing from this poem. And that's, Jim is talking about, like, we live in a society. We depend on each other. Like, what, you know, these people like in New York, Chicago, everywhere, these are our neighbors. These are our people. Like we don't, it's not like they first come for these people like over there and like we're not over there too. Like, they are our neighbors. And a lot of folks right now are asking, like, what can I do and all this? And I think there's this notion that if you're not digging in and out there in the streets every single moment, then you're not actually doing anything. And what is more likely, I think, is that there are going to be moments for all of us in the coming months, in the coming years. We don't know exactly when there are, but there are going to be moments when we have a decision to make about whether or not we're going to be okay with these people taking our neighbors. And that's going to be the moment like that we need to like decide for ourselves now, like how we are going to act in that moment, because it's only going to come and we're going to have that decision to make in the moment. And we're best in a collective, right? We're best operating in preparation for that moment as a collective too. And there are some really, you know, I think like as dark as everything is right now, there are actually some really inspiring formations that are operating right now in resistance to what's going on. Absolute, like, brilliant, genius formations doing their best to protect our communities, to protect our neighbors, and to keep us like safe right now. And I do think like we can build on those formations and on other collective formations that are like really proving helpful in resistance right now. One of them is tenants unions as well. They are these really powerful formations right now, allowing people to have you know, more voice over folks. I also think a lot about the debt collective. and the folks over there who are working on issues of student debt and medical debt and different formations that can come around on debtors in relationship to this. And as dark as everything is, there are windows right now, but I think those windows only exist if we remember we live in a society. If we remember that, like, these are our neighbors, and that one of the reasons that, like, we're in this right now is underlying, like, a lot of the white supremacy that, like, rose of MAGA and everything else was also a whole series of things around alienation and around, like, our alienated society, and the fact that, like, long before now, we did not operate in a care society the way that we should. And the pandemic really, like, you know, showed us, like, how fraught everything is and how loose everything is. We just saw us kill Medicare for all. Like, so we're really talking about here, like, moving forward as a collective, but as a collective that, like, centers care for each other and care for our neighbors.
Ernesto Castaneda, you're going to have the last word, but I'm going to tell you, everybody, let it carry this conversation over just a bit when I make my station break, because these gentlemen have a lot to say, and I hope that your thoughts have been provoked by this conversation as they have. They've provoked mine. They're making me think. There's the John Lewis National Day of Action on July 17th. And I hope that you'll be involved in that. You don't have to go downtown in Chicago. You don't have to go downtown anywhere. You just might hold up a placard. I don't know. But there is, the thing is, if you look at this bill, the big beautiful bill that almost didn't get through, Ernesto, it was the people who were pushing these congressmen who eventually, and the senators who eventually voted for it, because the people are so angry. I mean, these Republicans did carve-outs so that it won't be that bad in their districts and in their states, right? And I think that what we need to do is show up now, Ernesto. We've got to show up, and we've got to care. I mean, no one should be, no one should have to drink from the toilet bowl.
Right.
I mean,
No, this, yeah. No, this is Donald Trump's bill. It was his dream list, his desire. The Republicans went along and passed it, barely, but they passed it. At least here, the Democrats, I think, they deserve some credit that they didn't go along this time, which is good. But yes, now we have to hold them accountable, because this not only impacts the immigrants, the people of color, the Democrats, the blue cities. This is also going to impact the Republican voter, the rural white workers, the people that worry about pollution, which is everybody is going to be impacted by it. These cuts in Medicare are going to impact all Americans. So yes, we have to hold these people accountable in 2026, in 2028. And to summarize the discussion, what's happening in Florida in this detention center should worry everybody, because taking away the rights of individuals means that they can be taken away from citizens and from anybody dissenting, criticizing, seen as being in the opposition. So it's not about one racial group or another. It's about everybody being concerned. And then the key word, I think, is what Ari was saying a minute ago, solidarity. It's dark times, a lot to be concerned about, but I also see a lot of positive signs of solidarity across places, spaces, and different groups of people, supporting the neighbors, supporting the people who are members of our society, and realizing that we depend on each other, and we are not okay looking the other way and letting somebody be taken away for no real reason when they are not criminals. So I think that's starting to vote, and that's making it harder for Trump to continue his white nationalist dream. We see it in the polls. 79% of people now are openly saying that they know that immigration is something good. So I think we have to continue telling those stories, to continue telling how immigration has made America what it is, America great, and how we need immigrants for our economy to continue growing, and how we can now create new paths so they can become citizens, so they can have better rights, so they can have better income and lift everybody's wages and things like that, that are propulsive and positive, and not this punitive dream that scapegoated immigrants, but it's not going to produce anything good. The bill that was passed puts a lot of money into immigration and only makes things worse. So thank you so much for having us today.
well, of course. And, just remember, everybody, the first illegal immigrants were the Pilgrims. So just everybody kind of pull up on that piece. Think about that. They didn't ask permission. They were welcomed here, but then they genocided out a whole people. So it's how quickly we forget, and maybe that's part of the reason we have a hard time wrapping our arms and minds around this issue, because now we're the people we fought. And please, I don't want to hear that your family wasn't here 400 years ago or 300 or 200. You're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. You came to the United States, which meant you bought into all of it, okay? So you bought into slavery. You bought into the genociding of indigenous people. You also bought into the Statue of Liberty, a Black woman gifted to us by France that celebrated the end of chattel slavery in the United States of America. Yeah, you bought into that too. We're complex people, everybody. We're everything. And we're mature enough to understand that fact, that a person is a mixture of the high and the low, your triumphs and your challenges. We're all of those things. But remember this, my pastor's wife, Mrs. Luther May Evans, may she rest in peace, said, you know where you've been, but you don't know where you're going. You might be free right now, but there's no guarantee that you'll be free in a few more minutes. Breonna Taylor was in her home in the middle of the night, and the police broke down her door, and they were wrong. They were looking for the wrong person. You heard George Floyd, mama, mama, 9 minutes and 28 seconds. Do you really think he deserved that? Of course not. Of course not. I don't care what issues he had. He didn't deserve that. It's somebody else yesterday and today. It could be you or someone you love tomorrow. Think about that, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I am Santita Jackson. If you want to hear a little bit more, just stay right here. Talking with Ernesto Castaneda and Ari Bloom-Katz and Jim Narekas, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, In These Times Magazine, American University in the house, and so is Howard. Thank you, University. Me. God bless you, everybody. Is there anything that you'd like to say? Because this reconciliation bill, I'd love for you to come back and talk about that, Jim and Ari. I'd like to pull some of your stories, because I don't want us, Ernesto, to, many of us talk about all that we do not have. When I know, I've been on Fox News. I was a political analyst there for several years, and actually I had more freedom there than I would have had at other networks. But the thing is, I'm doing fine right here at this point in my life. I think we've got to take advantage of the relationships that we have with each other and lift each other up. I don't expect to see you, sadly, on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, News Nation, or whatever, because what we're saying does not serve the corporate interests. It serves the corporate interest to keep people incarcerated en masse. Because what happens? You've got a free labor population. This has always been the thing. After they took Black people out of slavery in the United States, they said, okay, but the caveat is, if you go to jail, you basically go back into slavery. And then they moved the labor force in there. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So, I mean, is there anything that anyone else wants to say? Because it's just.
Can I ask Jim a question about it, if that's all right? Because I really loved your descriptions, Jim, about some of the thinking behind legacy media, and that kowtowing to Trump, you'll be protected and things like that. And I'm curious what your thinking is, because then we have the owner of the LAT too, who is already is flying out to the Mid East with Trump already on this, and I'm wondering if there's no more Overton window for legacy media, and what your thinking is around this and where people are going.
It does seem like there are media owners who are throwing their lot in with MAGA and feeling like that is the bet, the horse to bet on. The LA Times, the Washington Post, and obviously I don't think you'll be safe there, because obviously Trump will turn on anyone if he sees it as being in his interest. But I think, Santita, you were talking about the bird with two wings, the bipartisan. That is the attitude that the establishment has had. That the parties are basically the same. They're both going to protect the interests of the wealthy, and the kind of arguments we have between the so-called left and the right are just kind of kabuki theater.
Well, no, and let me say this. I mean, the establishment of the parties, because I just went to the DNC.
No, I know what you're talking about.
And that's, I mean, not the activists or the people who are ambitious for change in the parties. No, but the people who control the parties.
I think that is an era that it lasted a long time. I don't think that era is going to go on into the future. I don't think we're going to go back to the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, where the right and the left have a heart-to-heart talk and decide that really they agree basically on the fundamentals. That era is past. We have I think that the Democratic electorate is losing patience with the kind of yes we can, hope kind of the kind of leadership that promises like everything's going to be great, but delivers no real change. Biden saying to his backers, nothing is fundamentally going to change if I'm elected.
But see, hold on,
that is no longer the electorate is not putting up with that.
But that's what Trump showed us. The duopoly's been broken.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Oh no, I'm saying I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah.
The duopoly that's over.
Yeah.
I have nieces and nephews who've just come out of college, and Ernesto, I was talking to my brother Jonathan, who's in Congress. His son, my brother, was one of the original signatories to the ceasefire bill that Cory Bush brought forth, and of course he's taken a lot of hits for it. But he's been able to win his way through Congress, but he's taken his hits. He can't be admitted to certain councils, business councils and things like that. And we were in his kitchen during the Thanksgiving holiday, just after that bill had been, just after people had started signing on to Cory Bush's resolution. And my brother said, and he kind of laughed ruefully. He said, "You know what? You don't understand. I would not have been able to come back into my house if I had not signed this." And my nephew, Noah, looked at him and he said, "Dad, you're absolutely right. You were not going to get in here." And I mean, because these kids are down the street.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gone. Even, what is it? Jonathan Greenblatt was in that meeting. He said, "Whoa, you all don't understand. You all keep thinking that Gaza is about the right and the left. No, we have lost a generation. This is a generational fight now." And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. I feel like the recent primary in New York City is a huge event. It's going to be looked on as hopefully a turning point in history, and if not, as like the last hope that was passed up.
Well, what do you think about? Hold on. What do you think about Cuomo? Because you see, Ari and Ernesto, you saw Cuomo's going to run as an independent.
They're trying to get one candidate to beat Mamdani. I suspect that if it was a 1-to-1 between either Zoran and Cuomo, Zoran and Adams, Zoran and Sliwa, I think Mamdani wins. I don't think any of them can beat. I don't have a crystal ball, but my sense is that there has never been organizing like this on the local level in my lifetime in New York City. And people talk about this. He came out of nowhere. He didn't come out of nowhere. This has been building for 10 years. With DSA in particular, has been organizing for state legislative elections, for congressional elections like AOC. They have got a real an army of volunteers, and to have a candidate with the natural charisma of Zoran Mamdani tied to this kind of volunteer force and tied to a politics that addresses people's actual material needs. I think it's very difficult to beat that with any candidate, let alone with candidates like Adams, who is he would be in prison if it wasn't for Trump, or Cuomo, who had to resign in disgrace because of his repeated sexual harassment of seemingly every female that he came in contact with, let alone like the. I'm a New Yorker. I can go on for a long time about how horrible Andrew Cuomo is. The fact that he was pointing to COVID as the reason why you should vote for him, when his policies were directly responsible for huge numbers of unnecessary deaths, where he was sending sick people back into nursing homes. We had a terrible pandemic here. The death rate in New York was super high, and he is largely to blame for it. The choices he made. Going on and on. He's a terrible candidate, and I think despite the fact that billionaires are willing to write blank checks for anyone who's going to stand up to the threat of democratic socialism in New York City, I'm optimistic. I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I hope not.
But I feel like the reaction of the media to Mamdani, the general alarm, panic from people like the New York Times, like New York Magazine, like the Atlantic, just the recoiling. When you were talking earlier about how the Republicans have this new exciting, new young blood.
They're exciting, but they're young.
Yeah, they excite the base. They excite the Republicans.
They incite the base. That press secretary, she's a whole lot.
When you have somebody who, clearly people like him, and people are excited about a politician who is talking to them about the things that are making their lives more difficult and what can be done about them. And for the party's reaction to be, oh God, who let this guy in?
It is what they do. No, it is typical. I know they reacted to Reverend. I know how they reacted to Bernie. This is what they do. That's why I was talking about the establishment parts of these parties.
Yeah,
these are Republicans read the room. They did not like Trump. But they said, you know what? I'll go with it. I don't like him, but I'm going to go with it. Now, next time, if this joker gets in again, what I'm going to do is surround him with a whole lot of us so we can try and thwart him. But let's be clear. I mean, Democrats, they threw out David Hogg and it's like that was just the optics on that were awful.
Yeah, I feel like as you say, the duopoly is over, and they are acting like it's not. They're acting like it. They have the luxury of throwing out the people who are exciting to the Democratic base, that they can afford, because the typical thing, and this is kind of the dirty secret of American politics, is that the people who fund the parties would rather lose in a way that protects their interests than win in a way that threatens them. So you don't have a person running against Reagan who is going to be like, let's reverse the the redistribution of wealth. You know, the Democrats running against Reagan were running on austerity programs.
Yeah,
You know, and they lost predictably, and that was okay. That was okay for the people who were funding the Democratic Party, because no matter who won or who lost, their interests would be fundamentally protected. And that is no longer the case.
Look at what Biden did. If Biden had left in November of 2022, as Roots Action was asking him to do, arguably we would have been in a very different position.
Yeah,
but that is not what they do. What they do is because both of these parties, look, Romney, Pelosi, and Biden have children on boards in Ukraine. Nobody talks about that. You've got these Democrats and Republicans who have money, who have financial interests in Ukraine. I mean, you know, it's like, come on.
Yeah,
really?
They have generations of instincts that this is the right thing to do. That selling out is the smart thing to do, and I don't think it's the smart thing to do anymore. I think that they are not seeing what is plainly going on in this country, where we're going to have, you know, if Trump is not stopped, we're going to have a military dictatorship in this country, with the ICE as Trump's personal Gestapo.
Yeah, but maybe it's horrible. But maybe that's what it's going to take to wake people up. I don't know, because you know what? We had J. Edgar Hoover, who was a horror, and it took us a generation to catch up to that. I mean, remember, there was Ernesto. One of the top 10 shows when I was a little girl was the FBI. And coming out of the civil rights movement, I knew as a little girl that that J. Edgar Hoover was a horror, and that the FBI trailed Dr. King. And that they were implicated in his death. That's just that's the reality. And I think to your point, Jim, I think that, things have changed, and I think these kids might just leave these parties behind. People keep saying the third party is not going to work. I'm like, honey, there might be a third and fourth and fifth party, because they're not looking. 900,000 voters did not vote in the election in 2024 in the state of New York alone.
Yeah.
Folks have been they are turned off.
Yeah.
And you're not going to turn them back on. I mean, Kamala wasn't even free enough to say, let's take another look at Gaza. She didn't, because Joe Biden told her, according to press reports, no daylight, kid. In other words, you better not step away from my position. You better not do it. And let us not forget, that was her boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, and we treated the Haitians the way that and because we didn't learn from that, now we're here with Alligator Alcatraz, where you got a president of the United States joking about filling the swamp with snakes and alligators to deter people from trying to escape. And if they escape, they'll get eaten to death. Are you joking me? Who does that? I tell you what, we do that. We had a president who was called the Indian killer. If we separate ourselves from this history, we had another president who said, okay, now that slavery's over, Lincoln, what we're going to do is send these black folks back to Africa. I don't care. No, we're going to come up with a country over there, Liberia. I'm not going to send you to where you were from originally. I'm just going to carve out a place in Africa, and we're going to get you out of here because you've done your work. We're done. I'm saying we have a history of doing all of these things, Jim and Ernesto. This is how we do it. And I think we've got to talk about that too. So that we're not like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. No, this is still happening. Because we would push Haitians, I repeat, back into the water so they could be eaten by the alligators. We've been doing this. You saw down at the border, they got these agents got on horses whipping these black Haitians. It was like, I was like, is this? I feel like I'm on a plantation. A plantation. These are slaves. This was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
In here. So I mean, and you got a president who, I mean, these public displays of cruelty and domination. And again, I'm not seeing any legacy media, Jim Narakis, Ernesto Castaneda. I'm not seeing anyone go into there. CNN could sue. Well, I don't know if that would work, but certainly they could demand to go into the facility. And no, I don't want to go over there. I want to go over here. Anderson Cooper, if he can stand in a storm and get blown away, he can do that. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Why aren't they doing it?
The major networks are in full retreat from an administration that is willing to use the FCC as a political cudgel, to go after any. He's talked about stripping licenses from ABC, from CBS, using the FTC to block any mergers of people who don't cooperate, which is why CBS is so eager to make a deal with Trump ridiculously, agreeing to making absurd apologies for perfectly legitimate journalism that offended Donald Trump. But if you have a state that is willing to use its tools to punish its enemies, and the Supreme Court is not going to step in and stick up for the First Amendment. It's a MAGA court. The corporate owners of the media are looking at what's going to help their short-term stock prices rather than what's going to be good for the
people,
the future of the republic.
Well, Ernesto, you know what? Hear me out, Jim. Ernesto, I want you to add. I'd like for you to just help me with this because you focus on Latin America. Not focus, but certainly you really join the Americas together. That's what I think you do. Because these are the Americas. Everybody between North, Central, and South, we're all Americans here. Sometimes we forget that. Is this an administration or a regime? Because that's how we characterize police who cover their faces, don't identify themselves, come in military gear and snatch you up and disappear you. Is this an administration or regime, just given your understanding of the different governments in our hemisphere?
Yeah. As Jim was saying earlier, I mean, Trump is auditioning to become a dictator, and he wants to concentrate all power in his hands. The Congress and the Supreme Court are expanding the power of the executive, which means whatever Trump wants, he gets. There's a figure of an opposition in the Democratic Party, but they don't have any power to really stop anything through legislation. Their local courts have been stripped of authority to stop things nationwide. There's this armed force with tons of resources that they don't have to identify themselves. They are going to be masked, stopping citizens and non-citizens, the quieting of the opposition, going after media critics. So it has all the elements of things that Latin America has experienced for decades. But I'm still a little bit optimistic because all the elements are there for we going all the way authoritarian. But what that requires is that the government control a lot of the wealth in the country and a lot of the economy. Which you have in Venezuela with Chavez through the oil money. He was distributing that money. You have that with the elites in Central America really concentrating, supporting military regimes. Something that is still different is that the private sector is still huge in the US. And there's this corruption and this selecting of people that won't rock the boat that Jim is talking about. So that is an issue. But still, there's a large decreasing, but a large middle class, small and medium business owners, and even a few rich people that are independent of this and still value democracy for these things, that are not have not given up and are still willing to support small media and local public radio, etc., that keep voices like ours alive and around and succeed. Blue Sky, it's been able to, for the people who want to hear, produce these ideas. So there's still an open, large, critical mass of critical thinkers, which I think is great, which in Latin America in previous decades, when the newspapers in Mexico, for example, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, they depended from the subsidies of the government directly. So if they went outside of the line of the government, they will disappear, or the editor will go away really quickly. And there was not a lot of space outside of the couple of large media channels in TV and a few newspapers. That was it. There wasn't the internet yet. So right now, Trump has to control all these different spheres of independent sources of power in all senses, which is really, really hard. And again, people have read a little bit of history, have a little bit of historical memory. It's not perfect, but there's this deja vu of we've been there. We've done this to African Americans. We've done this to Jewish people in the past and all that. We don't want to be there. Some people want to be there, but most people are like, have this thing in their head that we better do something before this is too late. So I'm still hopeful because of that. And it's a large population. It's a large territory. There's still this contact with people coming in and out of the country all the time. So there's issues that we're not in a situation of North Korea where the borders are closed. Nobody can come in. The regime has full control of the media. And what we saw behind the Iron Wall, the Soviet Union, we're a bit more open. Trump wants to change that. He wants to become a dictator, but it's up to the citizenship to let him do it or not.
Do you think we're on the verge of closing our borders?
They're close to asylum seekers and to undocumented migrants. They are, but he's trying to decrease that with scientists coming in, international students. But journalists still coming in and out. The world knows really what's going on in Washington every day, and they are up to date with what Trump is doing as everybody else. People are still traveling up. Citizens, very hard to stop them from going abroad. So,
but wait, do you know about the Arab American lawyer who, Jim, I know you heard about this, who was coming back into Detroit? He had taken his family to the islands for holiday, and he was detained.
Yeah.
In the United States at the airport.
Yeah, the change in norms, it is now considered perfectly normal for the government to be, looking at your social media to determine whether you have basically committed thought crime, and that this could keep you from being let back into the country, or it could result in your citizenship being taken away from you. Trump is very open about what his values are. His values are control, exercise of power, exercise of vengeance. These are the things that are important to him.
But they're important to Peter Thiel. Like Peter Thiel, when he was a student at Stanford, this was in the 90s, and one of his fellow students, who was a Black American, African American woman, co-ed. We were protesting, apartheid in South Africa. Those of us of a certain age, we remember that.
Yeah.
And she had heard that he had made remarks complimentary of the apartheid regime. And she went to his room and she said, with great trepidation, I knocked on his door because I wanted to not confront him in anger, but certainly I wanted to get an understanding. I wanted to make sure that I heard that he said what I heard he said, and he had said it. I mean, because he's from Southern Africa.
Right.
I mean, I'm saying, and you have a lot of people. We look at Trump, but we're not looking at these young folks who are behind him. If you listen to Alex Karp from Palantir, he is so authoritarian. And
Yeah.
for all of these people who don't want DEI, they wrote. I mean, these people are blacklisting and blackballing students who are coming out of graduate school, who are coming out of undergrad, who have supported the Palestinians.
They're white supremacists and they don't believe in democracy, and they have a lot of money that they're putting behind that, no doubt.
Bill
Yeah.
Ackman has been very, and Palantir, they have been very, very aggressive in saying that they will not tolerate anyone who supports who speaks out against the genocide. We're watching people get fired from their jobs right now. And so, I'm saying we're already here. And I'm with you. I'm hopeful. But I'm a woman of faith. But I know the faith without works is dead. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And and so my thing is, like, okay, so what is next? And I mean, and how are we to interpret the news? Because you just saw what happened with Joy Reid, and she said, yeah, Palestine kind of got me out the door. Trust me, that got me off the radio. I get it, and I was willing to pay the price for it. But we've been paying the price for that for quite some time. I mean, I dealt with this in my Harvard interview 40 years ago. And my mother knew, Ernesto, that the interview was going to be hostile. Because after my parents came back from the Middle East in '79, boy, oh boy, because no one did that at that time.
Yeah.
I can tell you, the hostility, the threats, it was awful. But they were taking a principled stance, and that was it. I'm just saying, now it's way out in the open. So where do we go from here? I guess that's my question to both of you, because most people from day to day, Jim, when they look at the news, they're just taking it in. I mean, most of us are just like, they don't want to dig that deep. They don't, even though, amazingly, Jim, and perhaps you can help me to understand this. You too, Ernesto. Most Americans don't believe corporate media, which is what's interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I think that you can have a degree of cynicism that is not incompatible with being manipulated. I think that people underestimate how susceptible they are to having their ideas formed by the messages that are aimed at them. I think that you, to me, the cultivating a critical attitude towards the information that you receive is the essential political act of the 21st century. I think that you need to really think about where the information that you are getting comes from. Why do you trust the source that you have? What gives you a basis for understanding the world? This is for a long time we had a kind of a hegemonic information system where you had three networks that you could go to, and they all presented basically the same viewpoint. And your family is a demonstration of how, if you were not part of that consensus, there was a price to be paid. That consensus has been breaking down for a long time. I think that there's a danger of people who have skepticism of kind of the what is identified as the official narrative, turning to things that present themselves as, the alternative rebel view, and it's someone like Alex Jones selling snake oil, or and people thinking, well, this is not approved, and therefore it must be true, and you do need to do more work than that in order to understand what is going on in the world around you, and if you think that you don't have to care about politics cares about you. It is going to affect your life in more and more concrete ways, and developing a channels of information where we can share information among ourselves that we can trust is crucial if we are going to operate as a democratic public that is going to make changes in our society that benefit the people of our society rather than benefiting the oligarchs who are in the driver's seat right now.
Yeah, in terms of what to do, and going back a little bit to the beginning of the discussion, the not believing this scapegoating, right? That the enemies are this or that group, the immigrants. I think again, most of the people are not buying it. Fortunately, we saw. I think we had more of an hegemony after 9/11 of people being more xenophobic and being behind Bush and behind the flag, the two parties and the bulk of the population, and going for Iraq and all that. We are not that bad. Trump is much more authoritarian than Bush, but the population is less gullible. The issues that you mentioned are absolutely right. But I think they're not buying this. The immigrants are the enemy. We have to kill them and they will be fine. People are not buying that. So that's good. And then the big beautiful bill is the big beautiful bill for billionaires. And it's making inequality worse and it's affecting everybody. Yeah. And I think people are buying that. And then also all these conspiracy theories and all these lies that Trump has been repeating at his group for a long time, which now is kind of breaking down around the Epstein files, funny enough. At one point, all the cognitive dissonance that MAGA has had to do to follow Trump blindly, it's starting to collapse because it's so illogical, it's so full of contradictions. QAnon is gone because all the daylights didn't come. So this is going to come back to haunt them. So I think we have to keep pounding with the truth, keep pounding with criticism, whatever the cost, organizing, supporting people like Mandani, not following these kind of mainstream discourses. If people say, oh, but illegals, this and that, correct them on the spot, fighting this prejudice, educating people. I think the same things that we were doing before. And I think if we survive this authoritarian attempt to take power in America, we'll be a stronger democracy for it, but it will require all citizens to be more engaged and all those voters, to come back to the fall. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. Much love and many blessings to you. Ernesto Castaneda from American University. And I want to thank you so much for the work that you do. For the work that you do. You are appreciated. You are appreciated. Have to send a shout out to Marseille Saint-Antien. I'm so glad that you're here. I don't know where you're from, but let me know where you are reaching us from. But I'm so glad. And of course, Jim Narekas, fairness and accuracy in reporting. Because it's a lot, but I really think that this is a necessary time because we've been coasting. It's like we've been in an emergency for quite some time, Jim.
Yeah.
But because of this man's outsized personality and because he's been so aggressive in these expressions of cruelty, and but he has been, Jim, he's expressed a portion of who we are. Because look, I'm an American through and through. I love this country. I really, really do. And I love it. And because I love this country, I criticize this country. And I push this country to be what it's supposed to be. And I'm not going to stop. And I make no bones about that. And I think that you can't say that it's just like spoiling a child. Don't you know when you spoil something, you can't they're no longer of any use. Would you eat spoiled meat? I hope not. You know,
I would not.
no. And so I think now we have to be very, very critical and very intentional in our criticisms, Jim. But one of the great unifiers is the media, Jim. Is radio, it's TV. The first place you go to first you hear of the great musical acts. It's not on America's Got Talent or American Idol or whatever the show du jour is. It's going to be on the radio. It's going to be online. It's you still get people still get their news from the media, the corporate media, even if they say it's hogwash.
Right.
So that's part of the reason that I bring you on. I know I bring you on constantly. I know you're like, oh, here's Santita calling me again. But you know what? I know in the civil rights movement, one of the things that was done historically was media education. So we could understand what we were looking at.
Super
And
important.
that's something that you and Janine Jackson, your beloved, and your team at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, you do it better than anyone.
Thank you.
But you help us to, oh no, thank you. Because I can't wait to get the newsletters. I mean, I go through look, I don't look through my email for everything. But there's in the search bar, I look at FAIR. I mean, there's some people, Sam Husseini, I'm looking for him. There's some people who I want to know, what did you catch?
Yeah.
I want, because I know you caught something. I know that there's something that, I mean, the clearest, really understand. I mean, you had the courage to give me Bryce Green and his analysis of Ukraine. An analysis that, quite frankly, I think Norman Solomon, when he was calling for peace, he got Facebook jail for 2 weeks. Right? Yeah. I mean, but you put that kind of information out there. You help us to understand. No, do you know the background on these pundits? And we need that.
Yeah.
And I hope you know how much your work means to us, particularly now, because, we're seeing some things that many of us never thought we would see. Although I have to tell you, my parents are in their 80s, and of course they are civil rights veterans. They've kind of seen this before, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Reagan was so alarming. I mean, this is someone who one of his opening events was in Philadelphia, Mississippi. There's no train station, there's no bus station, but it is where they killed Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. That's where they found their bodies.
Yep.
That 40 years ago was frightening as it could be. It was like, who is this guy? Who would open up their campaign? It wasn't even 20 years after that had happened, Jim.
Yeah.
And so now, and because some of us caught that, I mean, because the only person who really stood up to Reagan was Reverend and the Rainbow, right? That was it, because he was so popular too, just like Trump. Because I just read the polling data shows that Trump, unbelievably, he's number one, he's holding his popularity, and his standing with millennials has grown. Can you explain that to me? How is it? Do people think he's a populist? Because that's still pushed in corporate media, right? Even though he sold everybody up the river on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
Yeah.
Help me. What? How do you think that how do you think he is portrayed in media? Just in corporate media.
Well, the basic structure of political coverage is the ideal is that anyone should be able to read your news article and be like, yeah, I agree. I think that you're presenting it in a fair way. That is the ideal that for decades, and what in practice what that is you quote the leadership of the Republican Party, you quote the leadership of the Democratic Party, and don't take a side between them. This is an oversimplification that there's not a mirror image between the way that the two parties are treated by corporate media, but as a first take, that is the way that things were done. When you have one party that realizes that you can say literally anything, and if there's reality that contradicts what you're saying, you can just say, "Well, that's fake news." Then this system where you quote both sides and think you've done your job, it breaks down. When the system is being gamed by people who understand the formula that you use and are willing to exploit it. But places like the New York Times and the Washington Post are sticking to this system, and so the news story cannot say Donald Trump took a step towards authoritarianism today, because that would be biased. That would be showing that you are not being fair to both sides. You're being unfair to the side that is stripping us of democracy. And if you are more committed to the idea that you are neutral than you are committed to democracy, then you are not going to be an institution that's going to stand in the way of a dictatorship. The Trump does have good instincts in terms of how to present himself as a character. I think his background in reality TV is actually very important in understanding Donald Trump. He understands how to make a narrative, how to create a storyline.
No, that goes back to his real estate days in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because he rose above the crowd. I mean, he got connected to Roy Cohn, got those lessons. He became a local guy, became a national figure. I know it's New York, but you've got a lot of real estate developers in New York who are very successful. But he marketed himself in a way.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, he understands that. And he's been able to market populism because he still has supporters, even though we're going to see critically after the midterms. We're beginning to see the hits that Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid have taken, and WIC and SNAP. But it has been the big, beautiful bill has been designed to really take effect after the midterms.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
But they're not talking about that, Jim.
No, and I know this is my job, but I do blame the media. I think that if you had a media that was focused on informing the public as best they can about what's going on, they would be doing everything totally differently. You would see an entirely different front page of the New York Times if the New York Times goal was to convey what the New York Times sees as what's going on. Obviously the New York Times has a different point of view from in these times or from the Santita Jackson show, but they are not. They believe that it is that they are serving the gods of journalism when they disguise what Trump is doing in euphemism, because by making a display of how neutral they are, of how unbiased they are, that in their minds they are sort of genuflecting at what they see as the principles of journalism, and I believe that this is a model that is doing nothing to stop Donald Trump from turning the country into a dictatorship. If you see a politician, centralizing power and eliminating all forces that can stand up to his autocracy, you need to oppose that. You need to blow the whistle on that and say, here's a person who is, for example, starting a multi-billion-dollar secret police force. That should be something that should be of great alarm. That was not in the New York Times editorials about the reconciliation bill. That was not their concern. Their concern was expanding the debt.
Yeah,
that's what they were worried about.
I mean, there's been none of that. There's been no sense of how dangerous all of this is.
Yeah.
They don't talk about any of that. They don't talk about the dangers of having someone walk up to you on the streets. They just show you the footage. People who don't identify themselves. They have no badges.
Yeah.
I don't know who you are.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and if I fight back, they've got guns.
Right.
And no one, and it's like Captain Obvious. Are you going to point this out? No, they don't touch it. They don't touch it.
No, and it is there's a feeling like when the Trump administration is cracking down on Columbia for not being repressive enough towards its students, and Columbia was plenty repressive towards its students, but it wasn't enough for the Trump administration. I think that the New York Times is feeling like, it is a good thing that the students are being silenced.
Wow.
The New York Times has a real crusade against trans people. This has been a major theme in New York Times coverage, is that gender affirming care is dangerous. That having trans girls play on girls' sports teams is very problematic. And this is something that they have fed in their news pages. This is something that FAIR has studied. We have a study come out today about it.
I read it.
And this helped to start to like a lot of the advertising in the 2024 campaign, particularly towards the end, was focusing on transphobia. The Republican Party, the Trump campaign, one of their slogans was, "She's for they, them, he's for you." That was like their closing argument. And the New York Times had helped to build this kind of like social anxiety about transgender that the Trump administration was able to cash in on. Even though, it was clear that this was a Republican culture war.
No, but I tell you, I don't think it's not just a Republican culture war, because when you come into communities of color, that's a real thing, and they're not transphobic. They don't have some phobia, but I think that we would be well served if we had a conversation, because see, we go from advocacy to annihilation, if you will, and there's no in between. People have to have some discussions on science, that some of which is unsettled, and that has to happen. Because I don't want to see us lose any more people. on particularly on that issue, because I tell you, I run into the buzzsaw on that issue in particular, Jim. And it's like, whoa, hold on. If we could give people the space to talk about what their understanding is, what their misunderstandings might be, I think that would be very helpful, because we're not having that.
Yeah. There is far more coverage, and this is part of what our study was about. There's far more coverage that looks at the trans issue as an issue for politicians than it is for trans people and their and I think, just as with immigration, that covering these stories in terms of human beings will do far more to illuminate than this kind of like culture war framing that pits people against each other.
But that is what they're doing. That having been said, they have a responsibility to talk about every particularly with that issue, to talk about the range of. I think they need to talk to trans people, some of whom feel affirmed, others who changed their minds. Because I've interviewed a couple of trans people on my shows in the past. I'm going to get them back. Who believe that that this is a decision that ought to be reserved for people who are adults. That gender affirming care, for example, is not something that you should not be able to make that decision at 12, for example. When I see if I'm not heard a conversation that does not devolve into recrimination and anger, and I'm like, wait a minute. I think, can we not talk about this? Can we not? And you're going to have some doctors who agree, some doctors who disagree. Some people agree, some people who don't agree. And I'm not seeing that. And I'm not seeing that, quite frankly, all over the place. Forget both sidism. Would you just give me the story? Would you give me the facts? I mean, on everything, Jim. On everything. On everything. We're not getting that. I just get fed a line. And no one's helping us. So now even the so-called, remember the water cooler conversations, we can't even have those anymore. It's like the OK Corral at the water cooler on everything. Because why let a fact get in the way? What's that? And I think we're so poorly served. I mean, in the New York Times, oh my gosh, Jim, they do not serve us well at all.
No.
Now, do you know what they did to Reverend in what was it, in 96? No, 92. We're backstage at the Democratic Convention. Senator Bill Bradley walks up to Reverend and says, "Jesse, I'm so sorry." My father said, "What?" He was about to go on stage and speak. The New York Times had already written the story. They had already published the paper. And they were talking about how, you all probably tracked this, how poorly Reverend was received. He hadn't even given the speech yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, and that's just him, right? And I can just recall that because I was right there when that happened. And it's like, really? They're not demanding to go into Gaza. They're not doing that. They're not talking about the Rachel Corries. There are a lot of Rachel Corries. There was an American civilian who was beaten to death by the IDF yesterday. I'm not even going to talk about that. That's not a headline. And a Palestinian American, who was beaten to death by the IDF.
Yeah.
Jim, what's the deal?
I'm
disgusted.
Yeah.
Jim.
Hey, have you ever seen a piece I wrote in the maybe around 1992 called "Conventional Wisdom"?
Yes, I do. I have that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show you these papers over here because it's going to make me go crazy. I'm serious.
Yeah. I was looking back at the way that Democratic conventions have been covered over the past, from basically like 76 through 90 through 88.
Mhm.
And one of the themes that comes out is how obsessed the media were with your father.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure that the Democratic leadership was not, giving anything away to the Rainbow Coalition.
Oh, yeah.
And that was kind of like how each nominee was judged in turn was the extent to which they were able to shut down Jesse Jackson.
And because that was what Gore was sent to do, and that's what Clinton was sent to do. And Clinton came after Reverend, even though Reverend had declared he wasn't going to run in 92. But that was how he established his bona fides, by coming after him. And not just, it's not personal. It's coming after the family farmer, the dreamers, public school, public education, infrastructure, all of the things. I mean, a balanced policy in the Middle East, all of that. That's what they were coming after. That's what they were coming after. I mean, they're still coming after Jim Zogby. Jim Zogby's 80. You mean to tell me he can't be the vice chair of the party, one of the vice chairs of the party? Really? Someone who's calling for inclusion and the exclusion of dark money?
Right.
What's the problem?
Right.
So, and that is conventional wisdom. Oh yeah, I read that because I was looking for oxygen. Anything that would give me another view other than what I was getting in the Times and the Daily News and the Post. Because I was living in New York at the time. Just anything. Help me. I was trying to breathe. I've kept you a long time. I don't want you to turn me down. But I want you to give us some closing thoughts about, because we've talked about a lot today. But I'm so glad that we did. But I've got to bring you back to talk about the reconciliation bill.
Yeah.
I mean, and how that's been covered. Can we do that? That's my birthday's on Thursday. Can I get an early birthday present and talk about that?
Sure.
Am I pitiful or what?
No.
Yes, I am. I know, and I cop too. But I want to do that. But what's your closing thought? Oh, there's so much that we talked about.
To sum up, I feel like we're at a crucial moment in our country's history. The dangers posed by the centralization of power, the consolidation behind a force that is not bound by due process, not they hide behind masks. They don't need warrants. They are authorized to round up people explicitly based on their appearance, but also based on their political beliefs. It's a tremendous danger to all of us in this society, and I feel like we need a solidarity in the face of this, where when we see people being attacked, we don't just think to ourselves, well, maybe they're not so deserving, maybe I'm going to let this pass. That's the point of the poem, the First They Came for the Communists, which, for a long time, people used to misquote that poem and leave out the communist part.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like communists. I felt like you totally missed the point if you're editing the poem to leave out the people you don't like.
Oh my gosh, the point of the poem. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that we need to think about that poem and keep it to heart. And I really to implore people who are in the establishment media to think about that poem and think about what it means for, what is going to happen when Trump comes for them and there is nobody left to stand up for them. That is the message of that poem, and it's now is the time when we need to be thinking about what that poem means.
Pastor Martin Niemöller.
Yeah.
My father would talk about him a lot because my father, of course, is a seminarian. You know what? I'll close out with his poem. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Think about that, everybody. They came, they're coming for us on the streets. And if we don't stand up for the people who we don't like, the people with whom we disagree, eventually that person will be you. Think about that. I love these movies, the Tony Curtis, Sidney Poitier movie, and there was a movie with Jack Lemmon and Jim Garner. These were people who just were disinclined to like each other. They did not like each other, but they got locked in together. And then as they spent time together, they saw that they really were different sides of the same coin. Everybody, please, please know they come for others, and you don't speak out, eventually they're coming for you. No one is exempt. Nobody. Just a few short years ago, President Trump was talking about jailing Hillary Clinton, and he almost went to jail himself. Think about that. Oh, how things can turn around on you. My love to you, Jim Narakis and Janine Jackson and the team, my family at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, fair.org. Everybody, some of the best critical analysis, really, of the issues of our day, you will find on Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, fair.org. And of course, In These Times magazine, Ari Bloomkatz and his team are doing a fantastic job. And I want to thank Professor Ernesto Castaneda for his work that he is doing. We all need each other, everybody. May God bless you. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show.